like to welcome everyone to our premiere issue of the healthcare IT version of the brand called You. Actually, I call it the global brand called You because in my work, I've found that these days it's not enough just to be a domestic brand. That in the organizations that we all work in, having a global brand is more and more important and adds to the complexity and interesting complexity. I got into this program because back in the 80s. I had an opportunity to work on the international launch of CIO magazine. And when we launched CIO magazine, we had to make a decision. We already published Computer World, InfoWorld, Network World, and we had to decide what we would do with CIO magazine. So would we create another technology magazine for CIOs, or we could create a magazine and eventually a website for the personalities and the leadership skills of CIOs, which we found is one of the great successes of magazine launch history through no help of mine actually, but it did it on itself. We found that if we were putting CIOs on the cover, people loved it and they read it around the world. So I'm trying to transport that in some of the work I've done in global personal branding to this program. And unbeknownst to him, our guest today, Scott MacLean, has been a mentor and a guide of mine because I'd say a dozen years or more, I was put onto the global board of an organization called HIMSS, which most of you know. And I had no business being in the healthcare business. I was a global media guy launching magazines and websites around the world. And they said, well, we need some help with HIMSS and we'd like to bring you in to talk about digital transformation in the media business. Uh, and what happened is sort of a history of my own career. I became obsessed with it, like I do a lot of things, and started learning the healthcare business. And I had the great advantage of having Scott MacLean, who was on the board with me at HIMSS at that time, and not only help guide that organization, but also teach me a lot of the ropes in healthcare and how healthcare leaders and healthcare IT leaders transform their own lives and transform the lives and save the lives of millions of people around the world. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Senior Vice President and CIO of MedStar Health, Scott MacLean. Scott, thanks for being our launch guest today.
Thanks, Frank, and really looking forward to having this conversation with you and hope it's of benefit to all of us.
That's great. So just to kick it off, I mean, we've all come to it, as I just mentioned, we've all come into this through various. I hate the word journeys because I feel like I'm on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette show. But I'll say it for lack of a better word. We've all had crazy journeys coming in here. I had my own, which I'm not going to bore people with on this episode. What was your path to becoming the Senior Vice President and CIO where you are right now?
Sure, I think it's a little bit unique. I mean, my academic background is electrical engineering, and I worked for General Electric out of undergraduate school and did that for a while, and then really wanted to do something different before I aged. And I went to work for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, which is a interdenominational campus chaplaincy, which is terrific in a number of ways. One, I met my wife there, which is awesome. And then also, it really was a graduate school in human relationships. One had to have influence over the students and their faith formation, and you had to raise your own salary, so fundraising, and then also obviously cooperating with peers and doing education. So from there, my wife continues to do that work. I went to get a healthcare MBA, and that's how I got into healthcare. Very fortunate. I was in Boston and was close to the what was then Partners Healthcare and now Mass General Brigham, and ended up getting an internship there and learned a lot from the many people that worked on informatics and information systems and in the clinical arena there at Mass General Brigham. Stayed for many years. Our kids grew up in Boston area and learned a lot through various leadership roles there, and then had the opportunity to come to MedStar Health about 7 years ago as the CIO. So and that journey continues today.
That's fantastic. As you're growing through this, whether you're at Questron or whether you're at MedStar or MGH, who were some of the heroes? And I'm sure that we're all gathering new heroes. I mean, your period in your business, and then I think in our work together, again, as you head of the board at Chime, we find that we have new heroes that we have as time moves on because the industry changes so dramatically. Who are the people that you looked at and said, "Wow, I'd like to be a guy like that or a gal like that"?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think a couple people from the Mass General Brigham experience were really formative for me. One is John Glasser. I think people probably know that name as sort of a father of healthcare IT, also the person who helped create the Chime organization back in 1992.
Hmm.
I had the opportunity as a relatively young person in the industry to have John as a mentor, a person who worked with me before I reported to him and taught me the ropes of things in this business. And so that was terrific. And our relationship continues today. He was a person who worked with hymns, obviously created Chime,
Hmm.
always was one who advocated that we would contribute, not just to what was going on at Mass General Brigham, but also in the industry. So I learned that from him. And then I worked for, in one of the hospitals there at Mass General Brigham, I worked for a person named Patrick Jordan, who terrific Army Ranger, Chief Operating Officer,
Mm.
who was very rigorous in making decisions, could make good decisions quickly. And I learned a lot about being tough when you need to be tough in
Hmm.
this industry, whether it's with budgets or personnel and different operational programs.
Interesting. So I asked the next question because of my own personal branding analysis myself. I went back and I read this book, and I have to admit that the brand called You is not an original on mine. I mean, everybody knows Tom Peters originally launched it, and I steal it at times, but he doesn't have proprietary rights to the entire name. But I realized at a certain point in my career, after reading that book, I did have a personal brand. And then I had a value proposition that I didn't know. I was a former special ed teacher back in the 70s. That's how I got started in this and wandered into global business and so on. But I realized that my own unique value proposition remained, no matter where I was traveling around the world, as being the special ed teacher I started out as, of being able to teach people complicated type things in a simple way, and looking for progress in small steps. So to this day, I'm still the special education teacher I started in terms of my value proposition, although obviously I have different audiences. What would you see is the value proposition you found that maybe has lasted throughout your career, or maybe the value proposition is many of them change.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a great question, and I think I match up with you in that, Frank, that between the electrical engineering, General Electric work, the university work as a college chaplain, and then within the healthcare IT world, it really is about telling stories and translating very complicated concepts
Mhm.
to people who have different disciplines. But fundamentally, you're putting technology terms in business language that people can understand. And I think I've been able to do that because I understand and think in systems, not just information systems, but
Hmm.
data flows and how those things work. And I had an opportunity when I started out. I worked at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and was able to work very directly with senior clinical leaders, and that's where I learned clinical workflow, even though I'm not a clinician, and how to apply technology to it to drive things like better quality patient safety and efficacy in
Hmm.
the clinics. So that's been my journey, and I think continue to do that. Do a lot of listening and thinking, and then being able to communicate back to people about advocating for various programs and fundamentals of technology
Hmm.
infrastructure up through the application and informatics layers. So you cited a book, and I'll cite one, Arthur Brooks' book, Strength to Strength. And
Hmm.
he first came out, I think it was an Atlantic article in 2018, where he said a somewhat controversial statement. He said, your career is over before you know it, and it's probably by 50. And so in his book,
Scary.
he lays out two concepts. One is uh, fluid strengths and then crystallized strengths. And so in the first part of our lives, and this varies by discipline, of course, but he says, you do your most creative work and best thinking. And he kind of quips there that he looks back at some papers he wrote in his younger age and can't understand what he wrote. But the crystallized intelligence, which is where I am now, I think really is helping to mentor others, to teach, to get out of the spotlight and let other people grow and have experiences and championing them.
That's great. Great. I'm sure you can't minimize the ministry work that you've done as part of that value proposition. I mean, I'm sure it's baked in to most of the things that you do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's fundamental. And we may end up talking about work-life balance in this discussion. I would
We will.
just jumping a little bit to that now, it's
Mhm.
how I keep fundamentally sane, I think, and keep going and are able to do this work is a faith basis, and also try to keep myself sleeping well, eating right, and doing exercise.
Mhm.
And but I think one of the things in healthcare IT, it can be very, very challenging, right? Whether it's a systems issue, an incident, major incident, or the budget realities that we have, those kind of things. I think I've been able to keep a cool head because of my
Mhm.
perspective, and that helps in my leadership.
Or lest we forget policy right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So not for the faint at heart. Um, so we're always talking about innovation. Chime does a number of virtual and live innovation conferences, and one of the things I bring up, both in my academic work and in conferences like this, is what are the risk reward structures that leaders build in? I mean, we've all been in an organization, whether it's the media business or education or Chime or wherever, we always pay lip service that I'm always here, you're always free to innovate. And then people say, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? So I'm just curious, first of all, what you see is encouraging safe risk. And I think the thing that I always argue about in healthcare, it having been a relative newcomer to it, is it's a do no harm business. And I would argue that risk in a do no harm business is a lot different than if you're doing cornflakes where you don't want to do harm, but I mean, it's obviously a different kind of harm in healthcare. What do you do to inspire that kind of risk taking on your teams? And not only to inspire it, but going back to the word, how do you reward it?
Well, I mean, I think it's first of all, technology has become so important and critical to the care delivery process and our administrative functions, revenue cycle, the way that we treat patients, patient experience, and all of that. It needs to be a solid foundation. So in that sense, we really care about risk, and I think one of the ways that I'm able to help people take appropriate risk is the adage, and again, this didn't come from me, but you accept responsibility for anything that goes wrong that
Hmm.
your team does, and then you push down and reward anything that they do right. And I think that creates a culture where people think through and are able to make calculated risks to move forward and do the right things. And I think that comes about because of some of the things we've talked about already, the faith basis, the mentoring, the listening, and reading what's happening.
Interesting. So I know that the brand, communicating one's brand or a product's brand has changed dramatically over the last 15 years with the advent of social media. How does a guy like you communicate your brand across the enterprise and what tools do you use? I'll give one answer for you. I mean, you obviously, because of the number of boards that you've been successful on and sit on, I mean, here's a guy that really interfaces with many leaders. So that's part of the brand called Scott. What other kinds of things do you do to make sure you can socialize your brand, not necessarily on social media, but in general as an influencer within and outside of the organization?
Sure. I think internally to MedStar Health, we have a few best practices that I think you probably recognize right away. One is that there's a monthly newsletter for our department. We have a fairly large
Mhm.
department by size of people, and so it's something that I try to write a column in every month and be able to tell the associates what's happening, both
Hmm.
in not only in the department, but in Midstar Health more broadly, and always include a little something about my life or something, acknowledge
Hmm.
something that might be happening in the world. And then we have a monthly town hall. I know you think I put the tie on for you, but we have a town hall this afternoon.
I'm just used to IT guys. I'm with them all the time, and it's usually a hoodie, so it's an upgrade.
We have a town hall this afternoon. We expect 300 plus people to attend
Wow.
via video, and so we'll be transparent about what's happening, and that's a way to communicate. And then I'm a big believer in rounding, so I try to be in the hospitals and clinics
Hmm.
at least once a month, if not more so, and connecting with people. And again, I think a lot of listening, acknowledging what's happening, trying to solve whatever problems, there are always issues out there, right? So some of them are small and you can take care of, others are bigger and you have
Hmm.
to explain the why behind it's the way it is for now. So that's how I do that. You
Hmm.
you mentioned the board involvement. I've been very fortunate again, and I think some of this has to do with approach, right, and being personable and getting along with people, and obviously knowing the industry. But there's been a lot of brand for me through the HIMSS organization, through Chime, through our vendor partners who do things like this, like a podcast like this, that allows me to be able to be out there and speak into the industry, which I'm very grateful and fortunate for.
How do you in building this and being able to communicate in front of 300 people, how do you go about personally remaining contemporary in terms of the things that we're doing? I mean, a lot of us remain contemporary because we have teenagers or now grown children that make us contemporary, and it's the infamous line, "Oh my God, Dad, what are you saying?" So I mean, how do you maintain that? Are there ways that through your colleagues and associates that you're learning things like ChatGPT techniques and prompt engineering and things like that. What do you do as a leader to stay there?
Sure. In these knowledge worker kind of jobs, we kind of have the privilege of being able to learn things every day by going through our work, right? So my work days are filled with meetings and sessions like this. Obviously, things coming in through various channels, whether it be email, text, Teams chat, whatever it might be. And I find that in whatever situation I'm in, there's something to learn, right? And I can pick
Hmm.
up on it and maybe dig a little deeper through the great online tools that exist nowadays. And then we've talked about these professional society organizations, attending meetings with other healthcare IT professionals, sitting around a focus group, for instance, that a vendor might host.
Hmm.
You're learning, validating, and exploring areas that are new. And so I think it's a privilege to be able to be learning all the time through the everyday work.
And yet there's still the challenge of generational aspects of some of these things and how we're I think one of the challenges that we see in the media business and the healthcare media business is that we have the young Turks that are out there that have these things as a second language. Uh, and then we have for those who even remember the show, the Marcus Welbys out there who are saying, wait a second, intuition. I got intuition. I don't need AI. So it's sort of interesting of how people are going about letting the young Turks. I mean, we see this at Chime with some of our strategies that the younger generation coming in to teach the older generation. I'm just wondering how much of that mentoring is going on, and then we all have the benefit sometimes of finding the Marcus Welby who says, I'm infatuated with this kind of stuff and really becomes an evangelist to show other boomers that they can do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes with the humility and the learning posture. I feel like again in any situation I'm in, and as you said, we've learned a lot from some of the the next generation of leadership and associates in Chime, who have unpacked things that I haven't had the opportunity to in my
Hmm.
career. You mentioned the adult children, also learn a lot from them, and they can translate things that I
Hmm.
may not know about that they're talking about in their generation. So yeah, I mean, I think it goes with not taking oneself too seriously and being able to listen and learn from whatever source might be available.
Hmm. Are there any instances where your vendors and partner organizations, suppliers have mentored you and given you insight that you never really thought of? Sometimes we think of it as being combative in a way. Sometimes it is, obviously. But in others, sometimes the trusted source of knowledge are people that really are doing this stuff and developing it that are a lot smarter than the people that are buying at some stages of the evolution.
Yeah, I mean, I think the great joy in working in this industry is everyone is focused on the mission, right? And people have different jobs that they need to do. You know, for us, it's taking care of the technology for a large healthcare provider. For a supplier, it might be, you know, getting their software or hardware sold. But my experience in dealing with people in the industry is that it's a great joy to work together on solving these problems. And I have as many friends on the quote vendor side of things as I do
Hmm.
on the provider side, and find that those discussions they're trying to learn things from me, right? And I'm trying to, you know, they have a perspective because they're out and about. They're seeing a lot more healthcare situations than I am because they're often traveling to different sites and
Hmm.
talking to other customers that they have. So I think that's great value. And again, this is I think the secret sauce of Chime. The Chime and Chime Foundation has that curated experience where small groups of technology leaders and
Hmm.
providers can talk with vendor partners.
Interesting. One of the most popular shows on television has the word succession in it. We always, again, that's another thing we pay lip service to, but then all of a sudden I've had the occasion where one of my great mentors and leaders, a guy named Pat McGovern, who launched IDG, passed away suddenly, and he was the fabric of the organization, and really created all the values that were in it. And everybody said, "Oh my God, what do we do now?" How do you build a succession planning strategy into the work that you do so that you're nurturing that talent? You know that something happens, maybe retirement at some point, that we've got the right people in place.
Well, I really enjoyed the TV series Succession. I'm not sure they got it right, but
Mhm.
it was very fun.
That's why it was a good series.
You know, I have to really commend MedStar Health, which is where I am now, right? The last 7 years, and it has a culture of well-defined um, associate identity and leadership capabilities across a very large organization, and then you know specific effort that the our chief people officers put into formalize succession planning, including technical tools that help us with those conversations. I think it's also we're just fortunate again to have such great talent. I mean, all the places that I've been in healthcare IT, I've kind of walked into an operation where there has been great talent on the ground, and so it's
Hmm.
and in the 7 years that I've been here, we've had some retirements, and we've been very fortunate to have people that were along the way ready to step up. And of course, there's when anyone takes a big new job, there's work that needs to be done both for them personally and then as you're leading them and the people around them. But I think it's absolutely right, Frank, that you got to think about these things in advance and give people opportunities, experiences to serve on committees, maybe external boards,
Hmm.
do projects, get different types of education so that they're ready to step up when the time comes.
That's great. You mentioned doing rounding. It raised the question there again, one of the great lip service things as having been a patient for a long time, 5 years ago this week, uh, and spending a lot of time as a patient, pay lip service to actually how much attention many people in IT and other parts of the healthcare world really focus on an intimate understanding of the patient. How do you go about doing that? I know you do rounding. I imagine that's a major information source for you, hearing it directly from the, sorry, horse's mouth.
Sure, sure. Well, I want to be careful because I can't and don't do clinical rounding, and we
Sure,
do a
sure.
lot of that,
Mhm,
and then also in my various roles, places that I've worked, there have been patient family advisory councils, which I've not served on myself, but we
mhm,
get a lot of input that way from having conversations directly with patients. And for me, I would say the rounding I do is leadership rounding, right? And I'm mostly focused on the technology environment. What's
mhm,
working for the
mhm.
nurses and physicians and other people working in the clinical environment? What needs to be fixed? You're learning more broadly about trends that might be happening out there that you may not see in service desk data or what have you. So I think that, and then there's one's own personal experience. I mean, I have to go to the doctor and to PT myself, and
Mhm.
so I experience things and observe and hear from family members and from fellow leaders and associates at MidStar Health about what that patient experience is. So then we can turn that around and more broadly address themes of issues that might be happening.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the PFAC. I co-chair the PFAC at Spalding.
Thank
So
you.
I get to do that myself. And actually, it's sort of interesting being in the position that I am of having been a patient there and having been a technology journalist and researcher. So
We're bringing it all together there, Frank.
I got a battlefield promotion when I came out of a coma that said, okay, you're the guy, and I've been doing it for 4 years now. You had mentioned the work-life balance. I mean, is that again? What do you do to get away from it? I mean, how hard? I mean, we're looking at burnout right now. I'm sure this comes up in our work, and I'm doing a conference in May called Compassion IT, the intersection of compassion and technology. How do you do burnout prevention of your own? And we're doing a session in the conference coming up on how CISOs are going through enormous burnout right now for obvious reasons related to ransom and breaches that that they don't get the day off like they used to. It's a 24/7 proposition. How do you disconnect?
Yeah, I mean, these are big operational jobs, and I think people that work in this field and in these types of roles feel responsible, right?
Mhm.
And we want to be responsive to issues that come up, knowing how much the clinical operation depends on technology these days. But I think some of the principles we've talked about here are really important in that this is a team effort, right? And so
Mhm.
having the succession planning, being able to delegate, being able to trust people that are very capable. It's building relationships. It's making sure that my boss, my partner, EVP in this, trusts several of my VPs, so that
Mhm.
if I have to be out, that he can easily contact and feel comfortable that they have a handle on the operation. We're in a little bit different life stage with adult children now. And so throughout the year and serving on the Chime board, that there are a number
Mhm.
of times we get together per year. And I'll usually tack on a weekend with my wife to try to enjoy a little bit of whatever city we're in for a
Mhm.
conference or something. And then we have various family things that happen,
Mhm.
not just a vacation, but shorter get-togethers. I've got a number of got a couple of graduations and a wedding
Mhm.
weekend in the family that we're going to this year. So that's a good time to really enjoy what we have.
That's great. I know it's premature to look at this, but another book I read was the a book called The Portfolio Life by a guy named Corbett here in Boston, and it talked about the area of rewirement instead of retirement.
Yeah.
So I know you're not ready yet. I'm not. I'm 72 and I'm still not ready either. But I have looked at the portfolio life as sort of a guidebook for what I do, whether you want one giant job or if you want a bunch of portfolio job. So you do a little bit of this, you're in academics, you're coaching youth wrestling, you're doing so as you look at getting to that stage, I mean, what kind of things, without announcing retirement, obviously, what are some of the things that really like I've gotten all this experience. Here's something else I'd like to do, whether it's totally different or whether it's an extension of what you're doing now.
Well, it's a really good capstone question, Frank, for all that we've been discussing here. And there are a number of things that we want to accomplish at MedStar Health here, that I'd like to do in this
Hmm.
CIO role. But I do think that there will be life after CIO that's not full retirement, and I think that'll be a series of things that um, might match up with some of our vendor partners and helping them understand the
Hmm.
provider side of things to doing some writing,
Yeah.
and then because it's such an operationally intensive job, it's really hard to take out longer periods of time for travel and for
Hmm.
hiking and things like that. So I think there are some combination of things, the portfolio, as you say, that I'll want to take on eventually.
That's great. Just one other question you brought up, because I know you're going to be going to a town hall today. It's sort of an off the script question, and this is going to air after that town hall, so it's there's nobody watching on Signal or anything that's listening to our recording right now. Sorry, I had to throw that in. You'll know what week it was when you hear this episode. What do you think what are some of the typical issues that will come up in a town meeting that are consistent, that are really on the minds of your stakeholders and constituents that you have to deal with, whether technology or things that are some are related to technology. I mean, we're hearing, I've been on some, and pajama time comes up. I'm spending too much time with
Sure.
technology in bed.
Well, we really do try to we survey the associates after every town hall, and they're well attended. We run
Mhm.
for about 80 minutes, and again, it's via video, and we do really try to answer every question that people have to the best that we can, and they give input about what they want to hear about. So today, surprise of all surprise, the keynote speakers will be talking about artificial intelligence and healthcare, and what we're doing, in our program here
Mhm.
at MedStar Health. So I think that'll be engaging and interesting to the associates. We always have parts we update our associates on our follow-up from our associate engagement survey
Mhm.
and what we're doing to help respond to their comments. We honor some people who have been recognized for various achievements along the way. And of course, I'll talk a little bit about what's happening in the environment now. I think in terms of questions, it's natural that people are focused on their day-to-day work life, right? And what might be
Mhm.
rewarding or frustrating. And so it's a big operation, and whether it's within the information services department, working across teams, informatics, infrastructure, applications, and getting our work done, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's operational, responding to ticket work, or if it's project work,
Mhm.
and the ways that those things get thwarted, either because of our own, coordination issues or something that's happening in the business with other operational or clinical leaders
Mhm.
that we need to iron out. So we talk about those things. Again, repeated trend issues often come up, and people say, "Well, what about this? Can we
What
address
have we
that?"
done about it? Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that I would expect
Mhm.
to come up this afternoon.
That's fantastic. This is great. Well, our time has come, and I just again want to thank you, not only just for being my guest, but for what you've given me in this business. So that's why you're number one on the list for our brand called You interview. So I thought it was fantastic, and we'll be seeing each other again at our chime work as well. So that'd be a great honor.
Sounds great, Frank. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Appreciate you.
thank you.